All right, welcome back. Word of Mouth Podcast, Season 2, Episode 4. We just listened to two really good pre records that I had done before on beautiful moments when I was at the ballet this last Christmas time and my nephew and niece's games, baseball and lacrosse, and how it just was such a completely different experience than anytime I ever showed up during my drinking days. Even if I was not drinking at their event, I would have been hungover from the day before, right? I wouldn't have even noticed that Frederick's was on the back of their jerseys. I wouldn't have noticed the curtains or any of the beauty of the ballet because I would have just been dipping off to get wine, right? It's crazy. And that's the kind of stuff when you're stuck, when you're the frog in the pot, when you're on the hamster wheel of hell, right? To my boys out there and anybody struggling, and for anyone listening to this that has a friend or family member that could benefit from hearing it, send it on, right? Spread the word. Give them Alcohol, the heavyweight champion of the world, Season 1, Episode 2. And that right there, if they're not moved after that, then they probably aren't an alcoholic, right? But most people hear that that particular episode, and that's what does it for them. That's what opens their ears. They lower their guard, and they open their ears, and they're like, all right, I'll listen to this dude. He's got my attention. Okay, so now that I have your attention, right, like, what do you do with all this extra time? Yeah. I've talked about this in previous episodes, and this is what you do now, right? It's like, this is the life without alcohol. And you wonder, 3+ years ago, and then the 10 years prior to that, I couldn't imagine a life without alcohol, because alcohol is it's everywhere. It's in everything, especially in the military. You've heard me talk about, you got just your standard U.S. holidays, right? And then the Navy layers on all of the reasons to drink in the Navy, right? And then culturally, right? Like Hispanic, Mexican people, they've got a whole calendar laid on top of that of times that they drink, right? Like my buddy Paps, he was telling me, he was showing me the quinceañeras and the birthdays and all the stuff, right? So he's like, I've got all the stuff that America does. I've got all the stuff that the Navy does, and then I've got all the stuff that my Mexican family does, right? So it's hard to imagine, what is this life without booze? But the answer is this is the life, right? Stories like beautiful moments, stories like welling up with pride. I talked about the dark cloud that goes away when you get out of the Navy. If your mind's just always thinking of all these things you got to be doing. You know what my mind thinks about today when I'm on my way to Atticus's baseball game? That I'm on my way to Atticus's baseball game. And I'm happy that I get to go watch, right? And I've got my service dog, Phil, with me, who's the man. And we're going to go watch Atticus play baseball. And the only reason I have my phone in my hand at times is to take pictures of him, right? I'm sitting there eating sunflower seeds, BSing with my brother and my sister-in-law. Sometimes my niece is there. If her popularity status allows her to grace us with her presence, every now and then you will see the infamous ZOE, right? She's a mystery. But that's what I'm doing now, right? We're just sitting there chilling, talking about life, watching the game, petting the dog. The kids are coming by, petting the dog, engaging with the community, talking with the people come by and want to say hi to Phil. He's an awesome dog. That's the day. That's the life without alcohol, right? And then you get in your car and you go home, or if they have time, we'll go out, take them wherever they want to go eat and BS, and then go on to the next thing, right? So that answers the question. That is the life without alcohol. It's a life full of beautiful moments. Some are very small and subtle, just waking up and not being in a panic, wondering how you ended up on the couch, going through your phone, trying to piece the night together, doing the damage control, recovering from the night before, physically, the fog that you go through, disguising the evidence, the mouthwash, the clear eyes, the Rolodex of excuses is all gone now. Right? And so those just waking up in peace in the morning is nice. You just wake up and take a shower, make some coffee. Like, there's no more panic. There's no more, you don't wake up in fear anymore. You wake up in peace now. And then you go on about your peaceful day doing things like coloring with kids, going to games, getting them ready for school. That's the life without alcohol, and it's a beautiful life, man. It is a beautiful, meaningful, purposeful life. And at a certain point, you'll realize that helping other people get sober helps you stay sober, right? And then you do stuff like service work, right? For me, telling this, I have a gift. My gift is my words. I finally had to accept it this year. I mean, I look back. Since I was a kid, I've been told I would make a great salesman and a great lawyer. I've been told that since I was in middle school, right? When I was on the debate team as a freshman, I was the only freshman on the varsity debate team. And I won, right? The only reason I won every time. I was undefeated. My high school debate record is whatever and 0 because I never lost, right? And I had to concede because I was a freshman. Anytime I met somebody from my school in the tournament, I just had to concede because they had seniority. And so I got tired of not being able to go to the championship and win. And then my sophomore year, I either had to play football or debate. I couldn't do both. So I just chose football. I was like, I'm going to have to wait till I'm a senior before I can win a tournament. And I'm too much of a winner to want to sit here and concede for 3 years before I can finally get on the big stage. I was like, nah, screw that. I like being a middle linebacker. And then I did impromptu speaking, and I was really good at that. I got into the Navy. I earned a nickname Mouth. I've never been afraid of public speaking. I mean, there's no crowd too big. no venue too small for me, right? Like I'm not scared by it. And for a long time, I thought everybody was like that. And as I've gotten older and older, I've realized that it's actually more unique than I thought. And after I went on the Building Great Sales Team podcast, it blew up. It's the #1 episode that Doug Mitchell's ever done. It was the top episode of the month, top episode of the year, and now it's his most downloaded episode of all time. And then he invited me back a second time, and it was very good as well. It was a very popular episode. So here I am, right? And I thought I could do a podcast. I could do it in 10 minutes or less. I can do it in clean ways so that kids and grandparents and everybody in between can listen to it. There are a couple cuss words in some of my earlier recorded episodes. And I could do this thing. I can use my gift that I'm finally have accepted. I'm aware of. I've been made aware of it my whole life. When I was at Walter Reed, the guy told me, "Did anybody ever tell you make a good doctor or a lawyer?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually about 500 times my whole life." He's like, "Why didn't you do it?" And I was like, "I didn't want to read all them books." And or not a doctor or a lawyer. He said a lawyer or a salesman. I was like, "Yeah, I didn't want to be a salesman. I don't want to read all those books." And I got to shoot guns and drive boats in the Navy. And so now it's kind of like, what do you do, right? So I'm going to give you some examples of how do you start finding these beautiful moments. Maybe you're just in such a fog that you don't know where to start, right? In season 1, I talk about that. Let me put my hands on your hands. And I have this episode. It's called Do Whatever Dimitri's Doing. Dimitri was one of the best guys that ever worked for me, man. And I had a guy in my debt that struggled. Like, he just couldn't figure it out, right? He was just one of those dudes. And I remember one day telling him, "Bro, just go do whatever Dimitri's doing," right? Because whatever Dimitri is doing is good, right? I don't know where he's at. I don't even care because I know wherever he is, whatever he's doing, he's crushing it. He's crushing it for the debt. He's like he's in that good freaking human category, right? And then I look at when you're first starting to get sober, looking at things to do, I'm like, the same concept as do whatever Dimitri's doing is do whatever your kids are doing. You want to just like put your phone down and go be all about what your kids are up to. See what they got going on. You know how happy your kids will get if you go sit down in their room with them and like lay on the bed and just go there to chill with them like for no other reason. It will blow their minds. When they finally realize you're just in there to hang out with them, they will go absolutely crazy. It's like a second connection with them that you never had. So I hope you enjoy. Do whatever Dimitri's doing, and I'll see you back on the next episode. And then after that, I'm going to pause. We're going to wait until I start getting some stories to put on here. It's not just going to be me talking on this show.